everyone, I'm Elise Thompson-Richards, Associate Editor-in-Chief of Food Engineering Magazine. In this interview, I'm chatting with Savannah Stellhorn, Structural Engineer 2 for Stellar, in recognition of International Women in Engineering Day. Stellhorn shares her college experience, her work with Stellar, and what she hopes to see in the future of engineering. Let's get into it. So Savannah, thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem. Thank you.
And so I'd like to start by getting to know you a little bit better. How did you get involved in the STEM field, and when did you become interested?
Um, that's a good question. I got interested pretty much my junior year of high school. Like I was very undecided in the whole thing. I originally wanted to be an artist and like just not do anything related. But I was good at math and science and basically just went down the list. And so obviously engineering was a hot spot for that. Um, but I thought architecture would be really interesting first. So I looked into that and I looked around and found that Alabama offered an architectural engineering degree. So I thought that was the best of both worlds, and then found out that it's really mostly structural engineering and not so much architecture. But I fell in love with that. So the rest is history.
Well, I'm sure that you found that there is art in engineering as well.
Right. Fair.
And you mentioned going to Alabama. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your college experience. Could you describe it for me?
Yeah, so I went to Alabama mostly just because I wanted to be close to home and from the state. And it offered all the things I wanted. Plus, they had like a dual enrollment program, so I was able to work on my MBA while I was doing my undergrad. So that was a huge draw into it, and going through school and everything, I started like working with my steel professor mostly because that was the class that I liked the best. So I got to work with him in the lab a little bit, and that kind of kickstarted more of my desire to continue on a path that allowed me to do mostly steel design.
And thinking about your class makeup, would you say that you had a lot of other women in your classes, or was it evenly mixed?
Um, it was fairly evenly mixed in my MBA program,
Mhm.
which was a STEM path to the MBA program. So we were all in STEM related fields. But as far as my specific degree, I was one of four people. So there was just me. But in civil engineering as a whole, it was definitely a minority, I would say.
And being in such a small program, was that a challenge for you, or were there benefits as well?
Um, I guess like the program as a whole being small.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that was I think a benefit for me because it was a lot of like our class sizes were a lot smaller. We had a lot of shared classes with the rest of the civil department as a whole. But once it got more into the like the advanced classes and master's classes and that kind of stuff, there was, I think, my biggest class of that category had 8 people in it. So, I mean, I could ask any question without raising my hand, whatever. It was just like a conversation. So, no, I really enjoyed that. It was very personalized.
I'm sure that's nice, especially in such a technical
Yes,
area.
it helped. It helped for sure.
And so coming out of college and finishing your programs, how did you embark on your professional career?
Um, I just started applying to a lot of places. I thought that I interned through college, so I thought I was gonna work for one of those companies that I interned for. But I was trying to be in a specific city, so they weren't there. And so I kind of like stumbled upon Stellar. Um, and I hadn't even considered working in the food industry at all. I just didn't really know anything about it. Um, and the more I like went through interviews and met people, like it just seemed like the perfect fit. And I've been very happy. So
Well, that's a great segue to my next question. I'd love to hear about some of the food projects that you've been working on. Can you describe or highlight any of them in particular?
um, I guess one of my like first like solo projects was expansion onto the Bell and Evans hatchery specifically. Um, and that was a fairly like straightforward job. So as far as like a engineering challenge, I wouldn't say so, but it was one of my first experiences with precast panels. So like coordinating with that manufacturer was interesting, and I got to learn a lot more about that process as a whole. And then it was just nice to work on a plant that like birthed chickens rather than butchered them. So that was really fun to see all of the videos of the process were of little baby chickens, and that was really cute. And then other than that, I worked on a couple of cold storage, and currently working on a plant that does like honey buns and little donuts. So I've been very fortunate as far as the products being made. They all smell very nice. Um, so that's been really fun. I worked with a lot of different um, materials and manufacturers, and especially with what we do in coordinating like process equipment too. That's been really interesting. It's never boring, at least.
I'm sure not. I haven't found it to be boring in the food industry, so I definitely agree with you there. And, as far as looking at your career overall, are there any specific challenges that you faced in your journey?
um, I've been really fortunate. I guess I would call it like a minor character building moment, rather than like a challenge per se. Um, but really just learning how to like say whatever I think is the correct answer or what I know to be the correct answer at that point with authority, and like not second guess myself because no one else is. Um, Thinking about it that way, and then also often being the only woman in the environment is interesting, at least. But it's more of just a mindfulness exercise, I would say, of just being aware of like the situation, but not letting that affect me so much. So just operating the way I normally would, and I think that generally garners a good amount of respect. Other than like a challenge, I guess, is I'm usually thought like when I'm being introduced in like a group for like a site visit or something, um, it's usually thought that I'm the architect rather than the engineer, which isn't a bad thing. It's what I wanted to do. So at first, at least, but it's challenging, I guess, to remain mindful and not get so, um, I guess, worked up about other people's lived experience. I would say that's like the challenge, I guess, is just being mindful that like the majority of the time people aren't trying to negate your experience or be rude to you anyway. They just haven't come across many women engineers or just women in the sim field in general. So you may be the first and just make a good impression, I guess.
And building on that, were there any examples of occasions when you felt particularly supported as a woman in engineering, or alternatively, do you have any suggestions for supporting women more fully in these roles?
Yeah, I mean, I generally feel pretty supported, especially by like my direct um, coworkers. They'll usually have my back for whatever it is that's going on. But as far as thoughts on supporting women, just react the same way, I guess. Like, just be mindful of your reaction. If there's a woman telling you um, whatever she thinks is the right course of action based on her experience, you should treat it the same way as the same man equivalent saying the same thing. There's no difference. So I guess just being mindful of who you question and why you're actually questioning them. And I think that's the best support you can give.
Absolutely. And as far as mentoring, have you, benefited from having a mentor in your experience, or are you currently mentoring someone?
Yeah, I mean, I, I go to my coworkers and my superiors constantly. And yeah, we all work very close together. It's really nice. I have a whole host of people I can go to and ask questions, and that's been fairly easy for me. And then I can talk to other like women at Stellar about their experiences. And I currently have a mentor through like one of our mentorship programs here that I talk to every 2 weeks, and we just kind of discuss. And then just outside of work, I volunteer with a girls' school. So I try and aren't specifically STEM, but I try and push that and let them know, that's what I do. So if that's something that's interesting to you, like you're always welcome to come talk to me and that sort of thing. So it's a really nice full circle situation.
Yeah, for sure. And the program that you mentioned at Stellar, is that gender specific or is it mostly career level specific as far as the resources?
Yeah, it's actually very broad, I would say. We were paired up based on personality types, which was a really fun new way to do that. So my mentor actually, she works on the benefit side of HR. So like not in STEM at all, besides just the relevant industry. That's also really interesting and cool because not only do we relate personally just because we're very similar, but she offers a different perspective than someone, say, like that I work with on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's again a great segue into my next question. Why do you think it's important to have gender diversity or diversity as a whole in STEM and in engineering?
I think perspective would be the main reason. Really, just because I think based on your own life experience, regardless of if it's relevant to your field, you conceptualize things differently. So I may look at a problem in a different way than my male counterparts might, just simply for the fact of who I am. So, yeah, I think just diversity as a whole really lends itself to more creative solutions.
Definitely. And, being as far as you are in your career, do you have any advice for young women who are thinking about entering engineering or are just getting started?
My advice is always just to do it. So, um, just to go for it. And I think, especially if you're just starting your path in whatever STEM field, you're going to quickly find out if you like it or not. They don't really give you much room to not know if you like what you're doing. So that's very helpful. I would just advise other women to just go out and take on as many experiences as you can and just see what you actually enjoy doing and see where you fit in the best. And try not to be too hard on yourself because you're just a person like everybody else. Um,
And, as you move along and advance in your career, what would you like to see happen?
um, like as in the industry as far as diversity or
Or as a whole?
as a whole. Um, yeah, I guess on the diversity subject, I would like to see a more diverse group. I think it would be interesting. I do get to see that with like different professional groups and stuff. Um, but I'm really interested, I guess, in like new design methods and creative ways to um, design our buildings. There's always some new technology, so try and keep up to date with that in terms of what we do is always an interesting challenge.
And looking at my list, I think those are all the questions I had. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss that we haven't touched on?
I don't think so. I think we covered it.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. I really appreciate your time today, Savannah.
No problem.